your man, Louie Tee. Welcome to the 2018 NFL Draft Wrap-Up Series, where your man, Louie Tee, aims to break down all 32 teams in the National Football League's 2018 NFL Draft using our baseball grading scale: single, double, triple, home run. There are no strikeouts here in the Draft Wrap-Up Series. We cannot tell how these players are going to pan out, and I don't want to discount any of these players before they get their chance in the National Football League. And so we'll get a score for each and every single team by breaking down every individual player, giving out grades, dividing by the number of picks, and voila, we get that final grade and then move on to the next team in the series. And so we are starting with the Cincinnati Bengals because of my man B Knows Sports, who won my bracket challenge in March for the March Madness tournament. And so by virtue of that victory, his Cincinnati Bengals are up first in the draft wrap-up series. And so we'll break down the 11-player draft that the Cincinnati Bengals put forth. And I've said this a number of times with the Cincinnati Bengals. They do the draft well. And if you go on my website, LouieTeeNetwork.net, I've given a little brief report of every team's draft, just a quick little synopsis of each team's draft before I actually delve in and break it down here on the draft wrap-up series. Nonetheless, I talked about the Cincinnati Bengals and how they do the draft right. You can say what you want about their owner, Paul Brown, and how cheap he is, and he's a penny pincher, and he holds on to coaches a little bit, maybe too long in the case of Marvin Lewis. All that is irrelevant when we're talking draft, because they do it among the best in the league, and this is another quality draft put forth by that organization. And so let's jump into the Cincinnati Bengals draft in 2018. We start with their first round pick, a guy that a lot of people thought would fall to the second round because of an injury, but he still went in the first round, stayed in the state of Ohio. Talking about offensive lineman Billy Price out of the Ohio State University. So when you talk about Billy Price, this is a guy that 6'4", 305 pounds, looks the part of an NFL interior offensive lineman. You got to love his versatility. Guy played every single position on the interior of the offensive line, both guard positions and center, and excelled at every single one of them. So right off the bat, the versatility that this guy brings to the table is a big plus for a team that needs help up and down that offensive line. And so you look at what he brings to the table: 6'4", 305, as I said. That's great measurables. You start there, 32-inch arms, not the longest arms in the world, but he's more than capable of getting the job done from a measurable standpoint. Athleticism, this guy moves a little bit better than I expected him to. I turned on the tape and was pleasantly surprised. They moved him a ton at Ohio State. They pulled him a bunch. And, you know, in college, you'll get these teams with these funky movements for their offensive linemen pre-snap. You'll get it post-snap. At Louisville, Bobby Petrino switches his tackles in mid-series. You'll see the left tackle go to right tackle and the right tackle to left, so forth and so forth throughout a drive. At Ohio State, you got guys pulling. Again, Utah, they do the same thing. Guards pulling to block as tackles, shift blocking to the other side of the field. Makes no sense to me, but nonetheless, they do it. And he was a guy that moved around quite a bit, and his athleticism was on display. And you could see a guy that moved very well for his size at 305. Technique, I've got it as a plus here, but there are some flaws in his technique. We'll talk about it a little bit later on, but technically sound is Billy Price. You know, there are a few holes in his game as far as technique is concerned, but the guy is straight up, straight down. He keeps players in front of him for the most part, moves his feet well. He's very nasty. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. And so he does everything you're looking for from a technical standpoint. Anchors well. I didn't see him bull rush not a single time on tape, so that's not an issue for me. His anchor is pretty solid in the interior. And again, quarterbacks hate interior pressure. No pressure is worse than the pressure directly in your face. You're not going to worry about the pocket collapsing because of Billy Price. I can assure you of that. Balance. Does a really good job with balance. I didn't see him off balance too many times. There were a few times, and we'll talk about those a little bit later on, but for the most part, he's got good balance. Not a guy that's on the ground particularly a bunch, not out of the ordinary. I mean, unless his guy's on the ground and he's jumping on top of him. And generally, Billy Price isn't on the ground. So a balance not an issue for Billy Price as a protector. Toughness, guys, tough as nails. You know, when you start 55 consecutive games and set a record at Ohio State, or at least tie one with Pat Elflein for the most starts consecutively at the Ohio State University, you know there's an element of toughness. You know this guy's probably been dealing with some injuries throughout the course of his career, but you knew you could count on Billy Price, and so the availability is something that goes along with that toughness. Toughness can mean a number of things. He's tough on the football field. Again, a guy that will finish plays, has a nasty disposition about him, but also just being able to gut it out. Sometimes you just got to suit up and find a way to get it done. Billy Price did that throughout his career, and he's definitely a tough guy. Pass blocking, to me, one of the better pass blocking interior offensive linemen in this entire draft. Again, very clean from a pass blocking perspective. I think where you'll find a little bit of holes in his game is more in the run blocking game. But again, even that's pretty clean. Again, you're not a first round prospect unless you're pretty clean in certain areas. And he's really good at protecting the quarterback. I think run blocking, he doesn't generate as much movement as I would like him to. I think that he's more of, and I have this in my notes, more of a sealer in the run game than he is a mover. I don't see him displacing other 300-pound guys. I don't see him taking that 297-pound defensive tackle and moving him over a gap to create space. I see him taking his ass and turning it and sealing off that defender and walling him off from the ball carrier. I don't see him necessarily creating space. I see him opening up a little bit of space and being able to create a barrier between he and the ball carrier. And so I do think that he has some value as a run blocker, but he's not creating a new line of scrimmage, is Billy Price. Finish is, like I talked about earlier, nasty disposition. He's the guy that you want up front protecting you, and so there is a element of finish there with him. Awareness, again, as a center and a guy that played all three interior offensive lineman positions, there's a level of awareness that comes with, for me, being a center in general. You've got to be aware because on a lot of snaps, you don't have a guy particularly to block. In certain instances, as a center, you're in charge of line calls, and you're in charge of calling out the mic, and you're in charge of pointing out blitzers and getting everybody in the best position to protect the quarterback, line slides, things of that nature. The center's got to be a lot of times the brains of the operation, and you get that with Billy Price. So I think he's a very aware guy, sees what's happening around him, and is able to react accordingly. Spatial awareness, again, when guys are out in space, and it is not necessarily pulling or up at the second level, but you don't have anybody to block as a center. All right, arms out, head on a swivel, looking around. Late blitzer comes on a green dog. Maybe he had the back stays in to protect. He's coming late on a delay. Got to be able to pick him up. Spatial awareness. Head on a swivel to the left. Got to be able to turn quickly to the right, pick up that blitzer, knock him off key. So, again, spatial awareness. All right, no one to block. Left guard's getting his ass whooped on this particular play. Go help him out. Go help him out. Spatial awareness, he has that as well, which leads us right into looking for work. He's a guy that does look for work. I'd like him to look for more work, but he looks for work adequately enough. I think he could look for work a little bit more, but I'm not going to kill him for that. Snap to set, again, as a center, the last thing you want to do is have a great snap. Don't get your head up fast enough. Get destroyed right off the snap or get swim moved, and boom, guy already has penetration on his way to the quarterback or the running back. Quick snap to set, gets his head up, gets ready to protect on the play. So he does a good job there. Did have a poor snap versus Michigan, a poor snap, shotgun snap right over the head of JT Barrett. But for the most part, clean snaps throughout. And I did watch him in 4 games, versus Iowa, versus Penn State, versus Michigan, and versus USC. Double teams, does a really good job on the double team. Pulling, I put down in my notes, key kick-out block late versus Michigan in 2017. Late in that ball game to spring the running back for a huge touchdown run. Also, versus USC, had a nice pull block on a kick out to open up a huge hole that led to a touchdown run. Pulls well in pass pro. I put that down in my notes. I don't expect him to pull in pass protection at the next level. You don't see teams implementing that at the pro level, but he did pull and protect as a sifter along the offensive line at Ohio State. Did a damn good job of it as well. So when he's asked to pull, asked to move, he does a really good job of getting and initiating the block and staying on his block, even though there are times where he struggles to stay connected and stay on the defensive player. But he does a good job of engaging that player. And sometimes as a running back, that's all you need is for that offensive lineman to do his job and just create contact with the defender enough so that you can make your move. And so Billy Price, all in all, quality football player. I'll run down some cons quickly. Redirecting, it's not his thing. He's not a guy that is going to stop, change directions very fluidly. Again, 6'4", you know, when you get these upright guys, kind of hard for them to stop, especially when you get in a 305-pound package. Not the easiest in the world to stop, change directions, and go in another direction. And sometimes he struggles with the redirecting of defensive players. So his redirect isn't that great. Technique, I saw him off balance. I talked about his balance being pretty rock solid. The only time his balance wasn't at its best was when he was using this one-arm stab. And that's a move you'll see a lot of offensive linemen use, especially defensive linemen or edge rushers. I call it the long arm of the law. People call it the pole vault, whatever you call it. It's when you want to stick that one arm, because it's amazing, but one arm is longer than two. When you extend one arm, that's why you see a lot of people dunk with one hand, because you can get up higher with one arm than you can with two extended. And so when you stretch that one arm out there, you're looking to keep that defensive lineman as far away from you as possible. I talk about offensive linemen being like blockers or boxers, excuse me, and how their job is to use their reach to their advantage to win from the outside, if you will. You don't want guys getting into your body as an offensive lineman. Well, he's using that one-arm stab to try to keep that defensive lineman at bay. But what's happening is his arms aren't as long as he would like it to be. He's overreaching. He's overextending with that one-arm stab. And because he's overextending, he's getting off balance. Guys are swim moving him, knocking him out of the way because he's off balance, and getting to the quarterback that way. When I saw him lose, and I saw him lose with that one-arm stab versus Iowa, I also saw him lose with that one-arm stab versus Penn State. When he loses up the middle, quickly off the snap, it's generally with that one-arm stab, off balance, overreaching, and he gets beat with the swim move. So that's something to keep in mind. But nonetheless, Billy Price is rock solid. A really good pickup for a team that struggled at center with Bodine over the last 5 years or so. This is an upgrade at that position. And again, if injuries were to hit you like it's hit you in the past, up and down that offensive line, this is a guy that can provide you with some depth along the other two interior positions on your offensive line as well. So if need be, you got to kick someone else in at center that can only play center. Guard might not be an issue because Price can kick over and give you some of that if you need it. So like this pick, I don't love picking an interior offensive lineman in the first round, but when you need it, you need it. And if this is your guy, didn't think he was going to be there for you in the second round, which he probably would not have been, pull the trigger. And so they did. So in the first round for the Cincinnati Bengals, Billy Price for me is a triple. So we move on to the second pick in the draft for this Cincinnati Bengals football team. Second round, 54th overall selection. The Browns pick Jesse Bates III, safety out of Wake Forest. Now, I'm not going to break down Jesse Bates III's tape because I've already done that. I'm not going to give you analysis. You want to have the full analysis of Jesse Bates III, go to either the website LouieTeeNetwork.net, or you can go to his video through the playlist for the Draft Prospects One-on-One series in 2018. You'll find his video there and all the breakdowns of other players that I've gotten done, which you'll find with him and the next player selected in the draft by the Cincinnati Bengals. But nonetheless, love this selection. I thought he was one of the better safeties. And if you're talking pure free safety in this draft, just a pure free safety, I don't think he's going to give you much value as a strong safety. But if you're talking pure free safety, can drop 30, 40 yards away from the line of scrimmage, make a play on the football, has a nose for the football, can make plays on the football. Last line of defense, a very solid tackler, a guy that had over 100 tackles a season ago. Then you're talking Jesse Bates III. And so I think this is a great selection for a team that was really hurting at the safety position. Here's a guy that's going to immediately upgrade that position for you. And so in the second round, 54th overall selection, Jesse Bates III for me is another for the Cincinnati Bengals as we move on to their third selection in this draft. Third round, 77th pick overall. Ohio State edge rusher Sam Hubbard is the So I've already broken down Sam Hubbard as well. So much like Jesse Bates III, if you're looking for a breakdown and a critical analysis of what this guy brings to the table, go to his video in the playlist section of the 2018 NFL Draft Prospects 101 series. But to kind of encapsulate what I said about Hubbard in that breakdown, he's a quicker, less productive version of Ryan Kerrigan. This was a guy that wasn't even a football player in high school, was converted from a safety to a, and he was a football player. I don't want to make it, but he was more of a lacrosse player. All right, that he was going to go to school for lacrosse, and Urban Meyer said, hey, no. You're a good safety. Come to Ohio State. Come play defensive end for me. Guy puts on a ton of weight, learns the position. I still think he's learning as we speak. And so there's a lot more to come from Sam Hubbard. But just off of what this guy brings to the table, just pure energy, a high motor that won't quit. These guys, they stay in the league for a long time because you're going to get maximum effort out of them on every single snap. And that's what you're going to get from Sam Hubbard. Is he a finished product yet? No, I don't think so. I think there's a lot more growth in Sam Hubbard's game, but right now what you're getting is a guy that's going to get you 6 to 8 sacks every season for the next 5 to 7 years. If he's able to develop a little bit more, he may be able to get you double digits. But again, he's like Ryan Kerrigan in my estimation. Kerrigan is a guy that's going to get you anywhere from 9 to 12 sacks a season. Hubbard, I think, is a less productive version of Kerrigan. So he's not going to get you 9 to 12, but he may get you 6 to 8. So he's solid, and because of this selection, once again for the third straight pick, the Cincinnati Bengals register another triple. As we move on to the fourth pick in the draft for this Cincinnati Bengals football team, and we're staying in the third round here, 78th overall selection. Linebacker out of Texas, Malik Jefferson is the selection for the Cincinnati Bengals. So you look at Malik Jefferson and what he brings to the table, 6'2", 236 pounds. I've talked about this a number of times. He's today's NFL linebacker. That's what today's linebacker looks like. Right around 235 pounds. Guys that are quick, fast, that can move sideline to sideline. This is what Malik Jefferson pretty much is. And they needed an infusion of young talent at the linebacker position. I think for a while now, we've seen them kind of coasting at the linebacker position, not really making the necessary changes and adjustments to today's NFL. Their best linebacker, Vontaze Burfict, wasn't a Blazer coming out of Arizona State. And so they needed to infuse this linebacking core with some more speed. And I thought they have tried to do that over the last few years, and they just kind of missed. They drafted a guy out of TCU that was coming off of a bad injury, and he just never really materialized for him. They've taken some athletic guys over the years, and they've played solidly, but never really moved the needle for Cincinnati. And so here's another guy that they're taking a swing at that comes in, brings some athleticism, and we're going to see if he can come in and really help bolster and boost their linebacker core that I think needs a little bit of young energy. And so that's what Malik Jefferson, I think, is going to bring to this group. 6'2", 236. So his measurables are very solid and, again, in line with today's NFL linebacker. 4'5", 240 in terms of speed is tremendous, all right? And it's what you're looking for at the linebacker position today. Again, I think he's got some good football ahead of him. I don't think he's played his best football yet, and I still think he's got some growth to do as a football player, but nonetheless, he's got everything you're looking for from a size standpoint. 27 reps of 2 1/4, which means he comes with a little punch and a little bit of power. You don't necessarily see it all the time on tape, which we'll talk about a little bit later on down the line, but he's athletic. All right, the speed and the closing speed, you got to see the closing speed on full display. Versus USC, he had a couple of tackles for loss in that game where he shoots the gap, and it's him shooting his gun. He sees it developing right in front of him. A hole opens up, and he shoots in that gap, gets into the backfield, tackles Ronald Jones the second before he's able to get started. Has a sack versus Iowa State, and I watched him in 4 games from 2017 versus USC, versus Iowa State, versus Oklahoma and Oklahoma State. So against Iowa State, quarterback rolls out. He's looking down the field, and finally Malik Jefferson says, enough is enough. And he takes off, and it literally, between the time he decided I'm going after the quarterback and the time he got there, was literally, it felt like a fraction of a second. He was there in an instant. Quarterback could have easily have thrown the football away, but because Malik Jefferson got on him so quickly, he couldn't even get rid of the football. And so that's what he brings to the table from a closing speed perspective. He's solid in the redirect department, but I don't think he redirects as well as I thought he would with the athleticism that he has, but I'm not going to kill him for that. He can he can shed and slip blocks, excuse me. Good shed versus USC. He makes a nice tackle for a 1-yard gain. Good slip versus Oklahoma State. So you get some of these things with him. Not always the greatest at taking on blocks and shedding them or slipping them. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. But when he does do that, he's very adept at getting to the ball carrier. Man-to-man coverage, I like him in man-to-man coverage. I think that's probably going to be his best attribute at the next level, is his ability to play coverage. He's still got some fine-tuning to do with that. But I like him in man coverage a little bit more than I do zone right now. I think zone, sometimes he's not as comfortable in his drops. And when I say that, he's one of those guys that wants to look back at the spot that he's supposed to be dropping. Instead of just feeling where you need to drop to, he wants to look back. And there's a play that against Iowa State that really perturbed me. So he's dropping into coverage, and he's in great position to make a play on a football. A deflection, something. And we all know, over the middle of the field, you get your hands on a football, it bats into the air. You never know what happens. You know, another teammate's around. Maybe you bat it into the air and you're able to pick it off yourself by deadening the impact. I don't know, but ball whistles literally right past his helmet. He has no idea. He turns around because he's looking to see how far back he needs to drop and looking more at the player and in the spot instead of looking at the quarterback and feeling his way around the football field. And he takes his eye off the quarterback. Quarterback whistles the football right past him. And you're like, damn, you had an opportunity to make a play there, and you had no idea the ball was coming your way until it was too late. So he can be better in zone coverage, but he gets good depth on his drops in zone coverage. So there's a lot to like there with Malik Jefferson. And then he's got some range. I thought his range would be a little bit better And maybe some of the times when I was critiquing his range, he might have been a little gassed, might have been on the field for the 8th play of what turned out to be a 13-play drive. And so I'm not going to kill him because I know the closing speed. I saw that, so I know the range is there. But there were some times where I thought you should be able to get there, and he didn't get there, and guys were able to turn the corner on him in situations that I didn't think they should have been able to turn the corner on him. Nonetheless, he does have some range. But you go from those pros to some of his cons. Awareness, I talked about him losing side of the football when he was in one of his zone drops. But even from a tackling standpoint, he'll fall for the bait. He'll chase the cheese. And you can get him on some play action stuff. You can get him to take some false steps, suck up and play action fake, and throw right behind him with the tight end or some kind of dragging or crossing route right behind him where you're looking to try to get that linebacker to suck up just a tad so you can fit that football in behind him. You can get him to come up and give you the space that you're looking for as a quarterback. Taking on blocks, to me, not his strong suit. Again, you don't want your 236-pound linebacker necessarily going heads up with a 300-pound offensive lineman, but if they do, you'd like to see your linebacker stand his ground as best as possible. If you can't, slip him, shed him, do something. Don't get blown off the football. I saw Malik Jefferson get blown off the ball quite a few times. Tackling ability, I think he's solid as a tackler, but he's got to improve in that department, if you ask me. Too many times I saw him going at guys' legs and missing. And even when he does make a tackle, he's not an impact tackler. And what I mean by that is he's not a guy that's, when he makes contact, upon contact, you're going backwards or it's a stalemate. All right? You're not gaining extra yards after contact. With Malik Jefferson, you can power through his contact and you can drag him for an additional 2 yards or a yard or 2 after contact is made. He's that guy that on 3rd and 3, they decide to run it, and he meets the guy in a hole after a 2-yard gain. And that running back, if he's got any kind of leg drive, any kind of power, he's gonna run through Malik Jefferson and drag him for that additional yard to move the sticks. So I don't think he's an impact tackler, the likes of which you're looking for from a guy that's playing inside linebacker, probably better suited to play maybe weak side at the next level. Nonetheless, blitzing capability, I thought for his athletic skill set, he should be a better blitzer, and he may evolve into that at the next level. I didn't think he was that great. I thought his best blitzing performance of the games that I watched was Oklahoma. I thought he did not get a sack, but he put up a ton of pressure on Baker Mayfield, causing him a lot of distress back there in the pocket. So I think he's a guy that can get better developing as a blitzer, but right now I don't think he's where he needs to be in that department either. But this is a nice pickup, especially in the 3rd round. I thought a guy that was going to go off the board late too. It goes 3rd round, and this is good value for the Cincinnati Bengals, so much so that in the 3rd round, 78th pick overall, Malik Jefferson, for me, is a So we move on to the next pickup as we now venture into the 4th round with this Cincinnati Bengals football team. 112th overall selection. Miami running back Mark Walton is the selection. So you look at Mark Walton and what he brings to the table, 5'10", 202 pounds. This is a guy that a lot of people liked, and some people thought he should have went back to school for that senior season because of the injuries that he dealt with in that final year at Miami. They thought maybe going back to school would have been the best thing for him. He decided otherwise. I'm never one to talk about or criticize a guy for coming out because you never know anybody's circumstances. From what I heard, I think he's got a child and he's got a family to support. So, look, I'm not going to knock the man for coming out. And especially when you're playing a running back position, you're already on borrowed time as it is. He's dealing with some injuries. Come out, try to maximize your worth and get what you can while you can. So I'm not going to kill him for that. But you start with his speed. 4.5 is his speed. He ran a 4.6 at the combine, which I didn't see 4.6 on tape. So it was good to see him go and clean that up at his pro day. He ran a 4.5 at his pro day. And I believe he's closer to 4.5 than he is 4.6. He was still coming off of the ankle injury, so I don't think he was where he needed to be from a speed standpoint. That 4.5 is a better reflection of what he is. He does not have breakaway speed, though, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on. But quickness is something that he does possess, especially when you see him out in space with some agility, making guys miss. Love his quicks and what he brings to the table from that standpoint. He's going to fit right in with what they already have in a Joe Mixon, fit right in with a Giovanni Bernard. And I think he's probably a guy that they envision being a replacement for Giovanni Bernard when his contract is up and they want to move on from Bernard. If this guy can stay healthy, he'll be the perfect replacement to Giovanni Bernard. They are very similar in stature in the way that they play the game. I think Bernard is a much better pass receiver than that of Mark Walton. But moving right along to his agility, this guy's agility is ridiculous. At versus Duke in 2017, I watched him in 4 games as well. Versus FSU in 2016, versus Duke in 2017, versus FSU again this time in 2017, and versus Toledo. And in that Duke game in 2017, there's a jump cut backwards that is just ridiculous. Just absolutely obliterates the defender in front of him, gets to the outside and picks up probably 13 to 15 yards in a play that should have been tackled for a 2-yard loss, or at worst, no gain of 1. That jump cut was ridiculous. And then he had a nasty, just as equally as devastating jump cut versus Toledo in 2017, where he just destroyed Toledo's defense. I think it was something to the tune of like 13 carries for like $189. Like it was ridiculous. I mean, the dude was averaging right around 10 yards a pop, and he had like 4 runs of over 30, 40 yards in that game. It was nasty, and he was destroying their defense and making them look silly, and those jump cuts were a big part of the reason why. So his agility is not to be questioned. Vision in that Toledo game as well, his vision was on full display. I thought he made some excellent cuts, set up some blocks, and then cut it back against the grain, made some really good moves, and you could see he was playing chess while they were playing checkers. He was setting up guys to set up the move that was to come after the move, and so he did a really good job, and you could see his vision on full display there. Make your miss, it's outstanding. And again, I've always heard this, but it's never more prevalent than at the running back position. When you hear people say, BYOB, be your own blocker, you got to be able to make one guy miss. That unaccounted defender, you got to make him miss. And he may come to meet you in the backfield. You got to make him miss. You're not always going to have clean space and open field and green grass to run. You're going to have to make some guys miss. You got to be able to get the tough, nasty yards. And sometimes you got to make guys miss in order to do that, to take a 1-2 yard loss and turn it into a 2-yard gain. That's a win on 1st and 10. It's vastly different to call a play on 2nd and 8 than it is to call a play on 2nd and 12. So making a guy miss is important, and Mark Walton brings that to the table. Contact balance, yards after contact. He had a leaping run versus Duke where he jumped over a guy. I'm not a huge fan of guys jumping in the air, leaving their feet. I always think of Willis McGahee and how he shredded his knee in that bowl game versus Ohio State, jumping in the air, straight contact on the knee, shredded his knee. I just hate seeing guys leave their feet if it's unnecessary, but if you can do it and get away with it, more power to you. Versus Florida State, the touchdown that was called back. We all remember that run. It's one of his signature plays of his career. I believe that was on a Saturday night. I remember watching that game. Miami was undefeated. Florida State was making that charge, and we're trying to find out who's the best in the ACC. Of course, Louisville was doing their thing with Lamar Jackson, and so this is a big game. Miami was at home. They hadn't beat Florida State in quite some time. This was a big one, and they had him on the ropes. Mark Walton makes a tremendous run, breaks some tackles, gets hit down by the end zone. Remember, his helmet hits the ground, but he keeps his balance and is able to extend the football over the goal line after he dives. But it was all for naught as it was called back due to a holding penalty that I thought was a little bogus, but nonetheless, it's a hell of a run, and it shows you the ability to get yards after contact and the contact balance that he brings to the table. Pass pro, he might be one of the best pass blocking running backs in this entire draft. He'll put his body on the line, and he's mollywopping guys, and he's cutting them when he's supposed to, but he's also standing guys up, and love him putting his body on the line. He's a guy that I could see seeing the field extensively in some third down situations early in his career because of trust in him as a pass protector, awareness He's a guy that's aware of who's coming on the blitz, who he needs to pick up. He's a guy that's aware, hey, nobody's coming. Let me get out of here and give my quarterback an outlet in case nothing is open down the field. He's a solid guy in terms of awareness. And again, that's what you're looking for if you're going to put a guy on the field in third down situations. Stamina and snap volume. He was a guy that carried the load at Miami when healthy, so I don't think that's an issue. And he's not going to be asked to be the guy if Joe Mixon is healthy, if Giovanni Bernard is healthy. He's not going to be asked to be the guy at the next level. So that's not something I worry about too much with him. Versatility, like I said, he can pass pro for you. He can catch it. I don't love his hands. I think he's more of a body catcher out of the backfield, but he still can catch the football. And so it gives you some versatility there as a guy that can protect, catch it a little bit, and, of course, run the football. Ball security, I think he's pretty solid. Had 4 career fumbles, all of which came in 2015. So he hasn't really been bitten by the fumble bug of late. No fumbles in 16, no fumbles in 17. And so I feel confident that this is a guy that will protect the football. Patience, I think his patience is excellent. You saw it against Duke. You saw it against Toledo. Both of those games, you saw this guy get yards by setting blocks up and being a very patient runner. Leg drive is solid. It's not the greatest, but again, I'm not going to kill him for his leg drive. I think his leg drive is adequate enough to get the job done at the next level. You talk about some of his cons. Acceleration isn't the greatest. He's a guy that his top speed isn't tremendous. It's not going to run him away from people. But his acceleration, it takes him a while to get up to top speed. And even when he does get to top speed, there's no extra gear. There's no extra, all right, I'm in open field. I got to run away from everybody. Against Toledo, he got hawked from behind once or twice in that game where you're like, all right, turn it on. This could be a 90-yard touchdown run. And instead, it turns out to be a 77-yard run because he just doesn't have that extra gear. That acceleration isn't there to pull away from the rest of the pack. Toughness, durability, obviously an issue. Had a huge ankle issue in 2017. Missed the final 9 games of the season, so that's a problem in itself. But I think he's gotten a really bad rap. You look at his game logs over his career, and he didn't really miss that many games over his career. I don't think he missed any games in 15 or 16. I know for sure no games were missed in 16. So you keep hearing everybody say he's got to stay healthy, he's got to stay healthy, as if he had nagging issues with injuries and missed ball games every year. That wasn't the case. Yes, that ankle injury was very bothersome, and that's something that you got to look into with him from 2017, missing 9 games. But outside of that, he didn't miss a ton of games, but he's got to stay healthy in order for him to be the type of player that we think that he can be at the next level. And in receiving ability, I mentioned this earlier, I don't think he's a natural hands catcher. I saw him drop the football a couple of times, but when he did catch it, he didn't catch it cleanly with his hands. He caught it with his body. So I think he's more of a body catcher than he is a guy that's going to catch it with his hands. But you throw it to him in a good spot, he's going to catch it regardless of whether it's with his body or not. So that's Mark Walton in a nutshell. And again, I like this value in the mid-round. This is a guy that I think can help right away. And again, if he's healthy, he's dangerous. And so in the 4th round, 112th overall pick, Mark Walton for me is a So you move on to the next selection in this draft for the Cincinnati Bengals, their 6th, as we go to the 5th round, 151st overall selection. Cornerback out of Illinois State, Davante Harris is the selection. This is a guy that was rising up draft boards after a tremendous combine. Let's take a look. So let's analyze Davante Harris and what he brings to the table. 5'11", 205, played in the Missouri Valley Football Conference. So again, obviously level of competition is a question mark there, but this guy lit it up at the combine. 22 reps of 2 1/4, 4.43 40. So this guy, he turned heads. And again, when you come from a small school, if you get invited to the combine, if you get invited to the All-Star games, then you're already on the radar of most scouts around the National Football League. So he wasn't a secret that was unearthed at the combine. You're not a secret if you're at the combine. So From that standpoint, you start with his speed, 4.43. That is plenty of juice to get it done at the next level. So that's a big added plus. Athleticism, acceleration, all of those things, all of those boxes he checks at the next level. Agility, change of direction, really solid. I think he's a fluid mover, and so that's something else he does really well. Anticipation and awareness. I watched 3 games of his, 2016 versus North Dakota State and versus Central Arkansas. I think Central Arkansas might have been his most impressive performance that I watched. And then versus South Dakota State in 2017, which wasn't a bad performance by him either. And I thought it was great what he was able to do in that game, neutralizing 2 of the conference's better football players. One in Dallas Goedert, who was selected in the 2nd round by the Philadelphia Eagles. So he had a large part in Goddard not having the type of day that he was accustomed to having. So that being said, had an interception versus Central Arkansas in 2016, and it was just pure awareness. Him falling off, he's in cover 3, falling off of his man and undercutting a route. Beautifully done. And it's that kind of nosiness that's going to benefit him, but also get him in trouble at the next level. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. But nonetheless, can't fault a guy for going and making plays. We see Marcus Peters do it all the time, where he's just simply being nosy and it benefits him, and he's able to make plays. And that's what you saw Devontae Harris do on that particular interception. Ball skills, he had 4 career INTs. We'll see if he's able to translate that over to the next level. I think he might have had opportunities for even more interceptions. So I question his ball skills just a tad bit. We'll see if those come to fruition or not at the next level. Tackling and willingness to tackle. It's not the greatest tackling exhibition you'll see out of this guy, but he's willing to go in and throw his body in there. Again, it's not the most fundamentally sound, but I didn't have a problem with what I saw. He wasn't a guy that was making business decisions out on the football field and allowing guys to have an easy go of it on the outside. He made guys work for their yards coming outside running the football, or if they decided to throw a hitch or something short on his side of the football field. He did a good job of cleaning it up a lot of times. Man coverage, I think he's better in man than he is zone, because in man he has a priority. He has something that he has to do. He has a responsibility. Guys generally take on the challenge of, oh, this is my guy, he's not going to beat me. Whereas in zone, you've got a concept, you've got maybe a portion of the field to protect, but you can be a little bit more nosy. You're given a little bit more ability to kind of be free and roam a little bit, especially if there isn't as much action or you don't perceive it to be a ton of action. Sometimes being nosy can get you into trouble when in zone coverage because of the freedom that you're given. And so I think in man, he takes on the challenge of covering a guy one-on-one, does a better job of doing that than I think he does in zone. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. But blitzing capability, he can blitz as both a run or a pass blitzer. I was impressed with him as a blitzer, so that's an added benefit because he may be a guy that has to play in the slot at the next level. We'll see. At 5'11", 205, that's not the greatest size you're looking for on the outside, so he may have to play out inside. And if that's the case, I think this guy has the ability to be a difference maker as a blitzer, not just as a pass blitzer going out to the quarterback, but also as a run blitzer. And they used him in some situations blitzing, and he was able to get in there and make some tackles in the backfield and be disruptive there. So I like what this guy brings to the table from a blitzing standpoint. Day one, walking on the field, I think he can be a very, very good blitzer. And versatility, if nothing else, you're going to get a guy that's going to be able to help you on special teams, which may be initially how he's able to crack this roster and solidify a roster spot, is by being a gunner on special teams. And I saw him do that, and I thought he was really good at that. So he gives you a little bit of versatility from that standpoint as well. As we get to his cons, obviously his measurables aren't ideal at 5'11", 205. Again, he may be able to play outside with that. I hate when we put guys into a box. Just because a guy isn't 6'1" with long arms doesn't mean he can't play outside. We'll see if he can or can't play outside. A lot of times, though, with the way the receiver position, and to me, this draft from a receiver standpoint is a throwback draft where we're not seeing a ton of 6'4", 6'5" guys come out early in the draft. Most of these receivers in this year's draft that went early were smaller, diminutive wide receivers, 5'11", 5'10", 6 feet, 6'1". They weren't the biggest guys in the world, so a guy like Davante Harris will be able to cover those guys with no problem versus a guy like Cortland Sutton, who went in the second round to Denver, who's a 6'3", 6'4" receiver. That's the kind of guy you don't want Davante Harris having to guard. But, in any event, worst case scenario, if he's got to kick inside, I think he's got the quickness, change direction to be able to do that and handle it. But we'll see. Not everybody is made for the slot. Just because a guy is small, we'll throw him in the slot. Not everybody's made to play in the slot. So we'll see what happens there. But is he an LLCer? I asked myself, I went back and forth asking myself that. And for those of you who don't know, LLC is look, locate, and contest. Does he look, locate, and contest the football? Does he look back first and foremost? You don't look back for the football. Hard for you to make a play on something you don't see. And then when he looks, can he locate the football? You can look back, but what if the ball's already past you? What if you look back too late? So can you look, locate the football, and then make a play, contest it? I've seen him do that. Then I've seen him not do it. So I'm on the fence there. I didn't give him the benefit of the doubt because I charted more times of him not looking than him actually looking. So I put that down as a negative, but I think he does look. And if they can get him to look more times than not, I think that's something that will benefit him in the long run. And then finally, zone coverage. I like him more in man right now than I do zone. To me, he's too nosy. He's too greedy in zone coverage. I saw countless times guys get behind him. And luckily enough for him, these quarterbacks simply did not put enough on the football. So he turned what was a negative play into a positive by getting back in the play and knocking the football away, even though he did not look. He would knock the football away, getting there at the last second. If these quarterbacks were able to put the football out in front of these receivers, he's in cover 3. He's got eyes on the quarterback, and guys are running straight by him. And then he's realizing, oh, shit, I got the deepest of the deepest. I got the deepest third over here. I can't let guys behind me. Guys already 2 steps behind him. Now he's in full catch-up mode. And luckily enough for him, guys were being underthrown. So he's nosy. And like I talked about with that pick against Central Arkansas, it's a gift and a curse. He can make a play, but he can also give it away in zone coverage from being nosy sometimes. So that's something I think he just needs to kind of find that balance. And there's something to be said about being nosy. That's how you make plays, but there's a fine line and a balance that you need to have. And right now I don't know if Davante Harris has that or not. But nonetheless, in the 5th round, 151st pick overall, Illinois State cornerback Davante Harris for me is a So we move on to the next draft pick here in the Bengals draft. This guy's intriguing to me. I think he's got a lot of growth. And I didn't think he was necessarily used to the best of his abilities, but his usage put a lot of his athleticism on display. I'm talking about Virginia defensive lineman Andrew Brown, 5th round, 158th overall selection. So here's a guy, 6'3", 296 pounds. He looks the part of an athlete. Okay, 31 reps of 2 1/4, so you know the guy's got some physical strength. You don't always see that on tape though. But measurables, 6'3", 296, 34.5-inch arms. So he's got long arms. So you'd like him to use those arms and that length to win. Does he do that? No, we'll talk about that a little bit later on. But gotta love his measurables. Okay, you gotta love him right around 300 pounds. Excuse me, at 296 with 34.5-inch arms. You gotta love that. Okay, 34-inch arms. It's great length for a guy down in the trenches. Athleticism. This guy is an athletic freak. Okay, when you watch him move, you're blown away. This guy was a 5-star recruit coming out of high school. Okay, right in my backyard. All right, coming out of Oscar Smith. This is a guy that he looks the part. I mean, you can see why he was heavily recruited. Alabama wanted him. All right, you know, some of the big schools in the country wanted him, and he stayed home at Virginia. And they did some creative things with him. To me, I thought they were too cute with him, and I thought it stunted his growth a little bit. They asked him to do too much. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. But hand use awareness, Against Miami, I got in my notes here, and I watched him in 3 games versus Boise State, versus Miami, versus Navy, all in 2017. His awareness versus Miami, he was running a stunt. So he was running that TE game. He was on the outside as the end, and he was looping around inside, and they were running that tackle and stunt. And he was coming inside on the stunt from the outside, and as he's coming around, looping around, he sees Mark Walton releasing up the middle and to the outside as a running back, and no one was picking him up, and so he runs with him. It's a gorgeous play. A guy stunting, looking to go after the quarterback, and in mid-stunt says, hey, where do you think you're going? Picks him up and forces the quarterback to pretty much basically throw the football away. It's gorgeous, and it's rare to see a defensive tackle A, have the awareness, but B, have the athleticism to redirect, change directions mid-stunt, and run with the running back that's obviously going to be faster than him and really keep pace with him and force the quarterback to turn it down, essentially. So I thought it was an amazing play, and that's the kind of awareness you get with Andrew Brown. Redirect, I just talked about his redirect and how he was able to mid-stunt turn and run with your draft pick in the 4th round. And so you got to love that. You know what I mean? You got to love that he's able to run with Mark Walton, you know, on a option route out of the backfield, essentially. Ability versus the run, it's solid. It's not great. And again, I feel like he's so talented that there was a lot of meat left on the bone, per se, with him. Well, we'll talk about that later, but I thought he was solid against the run. I'll give him that. Motor, endurance, I thought those were all solid, especially for what they asked him to do at Virginia. They used this guy like he was an outside linebacker. He'd be standing up on the outside. They'd rush him off the edge. They dropped him into coverage. They asked this guy to do, again, we're talking about a 300-pound man, yet he's dropping into coverage. And they did it more than, 5 or 6 times a game where he's just dropping into coverage. They're looping him around on the edge. He's standing up as an edge rusher. Again, 300-pound guy standing up as an edge rusher on the outside. They were asking this guy to do a ton. And I thought it didn't allow him to develop any one real dominant trait because he was like a master of none and kind of just really solid at a bunch. And I call that Pam Mont. All right, proficient at many, master of none. And that's essentially what he was at Virginia. I felt like it stunted his growth just a tad. But let's get to his cons. Hand usage. For a guy with 34.5-inch arms, I'd like to see him use his hands a little bit better, use his arm length to push, pull, and get to guys, to maybe jack up a guy, get your hands on him first. I don't see him hand fighting, using his hands to defeat the arms and the hands of a guard or a tackle in front of him to win. I just think he lacks that right now, and he needs coaching on that because I don't think a lot. And again, he's not alone in that. Most guys that come from the collegiate ranks don't actually understand the benefit and the power of hand usage, and he's one of those guys that I kind of feel like ignored that at the collegiate level. Point of attack, physicality. I talked about him not being as good in the run. I felt like you could move Andrew Brown off the spot. I mean, if he met his match down in the trenches and he tried to get cute, guys were just washing him, gap or two out of the way and creating space. There are times where he stood his ground, but there were more times that I saw where he was blown up, and just uprooted and moved out of the way. You don't want that out of your 300-pound defensive tackle. Pass rush ability, he had 10.5 career sacks. It's a great number for a guy his size, but keep in mind, I didn't see a guy that got sacks because he won. I saw a guy that continued to hustle. Maybe the edge rusher came up the field, forced the quarterback to step up. Look what Andrew Brown found. So again, I don't think he's a guy that's going to get you, 7 sacks in a season. He's no Geno Atkins, I can assure you of that. But then again, there are not much of those out there anyway. Tackling ability. This is a guy that I saw miss quite a few tackles when he had opportunities to make some plays. I get frustrated when I see a guy burst into the backfield, make a play to win right off the snap, quick swim move in the backfield, got a chance for a difference-making play. On 2nd and 7, if the team decides to run the football, you knife into the backfield, and you've got a chance for a 4-yard loss to make it 3rd and 11. You know how much of a difference it is between 3rd and 11 and 3rd and 6? And he misses. That's so frustrating. You do everything in your power to win, You do everything right. You set the table. Now all you got to do is eat. And he doesn't eat. Frustrating. So the final con is impact on the game. When I talk about defensive linemen, because a lot of times with defensive linemen, their impact on the game gets lost in numbers. A lot of times as fans, we're quick to assess a guy's impact on the game by numbers. We don't talk about deflections, or we don't talk about his ability to force a run outside and make a guy bounce or run outside because of quick penetration. He didn't make the tackle, but he ran him right into the linebacker. Or his ability to eat up 2 blockers, which freed up the linebacker to come in and get his 3rd tackle for a loss in the game. We don't assess their impact on the game because we look too much at numbers. So I look at impact on the game. When I watch you, how are you affecting this game? From a pass rushing standpoint, from a difference-making standpoint, maybe making tackles or freeing up other guys to make tackles, or just being a nuisance up front, all right, blowing stuff up. Maybe your penetration doesn't make the play, but your penetration helps make the play for somebody else. I don't think his impact on the game is enough. And I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that Virginia they were doing too much with this guy. Andrew Brown was doing too much. So while it put his athleticism on full display, they were doing too much with him. He never fully developed one dominant trait because they did too much. They asked him to do too much. So I didn't think his impact on the game was enough. So in the 5th round, 158th overall, Andrew Brown for me is a I'll tell you this much, though. I'm very intrigued by him, and it wouldn't shock me if, A, he made the roster, and B, they were able to do some good things with him down the road. But this next guy, I'm not going to lie to you, I'm drinking the Kool-Aid here. I probably shouldn't be. We're talking about a 5th-round pick, 170th overall. But when you watch this guy, it's so hard not to fall in love with what you're watching. Of course, I'm talking about Western Michigan corner Darius Phillips. So here's a guy, 5'10", $193, 12 career interceptions, 5 of them go for touchdowns, 6 career return touchdowns, 5 of them on kickoffs, 1 on punts. I mean, just that alone gets you excited. You know, every year there are favorites, guys that you watch on tape, and it's just a bunch of fun. And he was a guy that I just had a ton of fun watching. I watched him in 4 games versus USC. He had a kickoff return for a touchdown in that game. Watched him versus Michigan State, had a touchdown return in that game. Buffalo in 17 and Toledo in 17. This guy's a nuisance is what he is. He makes plays. And he's a walking big play waiting to happen. You start with his speed. He ran a 4.54 40. I said, that can't be right. I'm watching this guy. There's no way this guy is running a 4.54. And then it was explained to me, oh, no, that was an ankle injury. Went to his pro day, ran a 4.4 flat. Okay, I said, that makes much more sense to me from what I saw on tape. So he's much closer to 4.4 than he is 4.54. So I think that was part of the slippage. You know, at the combine, teams get the first opportunity to lay eyes on this guy, and maybe he didn't blow him away with his measurables and his speed, but if you watch the tape, then you know what this guy brings to the table, and you know he was much faster than the 4.54 he ran at the Indy Combine. So speed, obviously, off the charts. Athleticism, acceleration, stupid. When you watch this guy run back kicks, he's running away from people. He's pulling away from guys. They're right there, and he's outrunning angles and then running away. It's like a thoroughbred horse. When you watch them in a race and they're coming down home stretch, and that one horse that's got the juice to run away from the pack pulls away, and you say, yeah, he's gone. They're not catching him. That's what you see in Darius Phillips. He gets the football, and there's another gear. Remember I talked about Mark Walton and how there wasn't another gear. He couldn't separate and run away from the defenders. Darius Phillips has that extra gear, and when he has to kick it in the 5th gear, he can kick it in the 5th gear and accelerate away from defenders. Agility and change of direction, anticipation and awareness. You don't get 12 career interceptions, 5 of which go back to the crib, without having some anticipation and awareness. look, locate, and contest. I love him as an LLCer. Again, you're not getting 12. Again, I can't stress this enough. It's not a surprise when a guy has double-digit career INTs, all right, in a short period of time, too. We're talking about a guy that was like a 2-3 year starter at Western Michigan. But you don't get that kind of production unless you're looking, you're locating, and then you're going after the football and contesting and getting your hands on the football. You don't luck into 12 picks. You can luck into 3 or 4. Ball caroms into the air. You're in the right place, right time. All right. You know, you're in trail technique. You're not looking back. Ball comes. You see ball. You scrape at it, and it sticks to your body, and you're just able to corral it. You can luck into a couple picks. You don't luck into 12. You got to have some anticipation, some awareness, but you also got to look, locate, and contest. So that's what Darius Phillips has done throughout his career. Ball skills. Do I need to tell you that this guy has ball skills? And what you're dealing with here is an X-wide receiver, so there's a reason he's got 12 career picks. He gets his hands on the football. Ball's in the air. He's looking to make a play like he's a receiver. So there's an explanation as to why the ball skills are the way they are. Versatility, this guy did some of everything at Western Michigan. Kick returner, punt returner, receiver, cornerback, out wide, slot. So at 5'10", 193, he could kick inside. And maybe that's his best position. Again, you got 2 similar stature corners in this draft. So you've got to make a distinction between the two. You got to make a clear delineation and distinction between them as to who's who. Maybe both of them are slots. Well, and maybe you drafted Darius Phillips more for his special teams prowess than what he brings to the table as a cornerback. But one thing's for sure, there's playmaking ability here. So you want to try to get him on the field when you can. But that being said, let's get to his cons. Measurables at 5'10", $193. Again, I don't want to put guys in a box, say what he can or can't do. I watched this guy play both out wide as a boundary and inside as a slot. So I'm interested to see what the Cincinnati Bengals envision for this guy at the next level. I'm guessing slot, but I'm thinking more so along the lines of, hey, we want this guy to come in and be a dynamic return man for us right off the bat. With the injury history to John Ross, you don't even want a chance at putting him back there and having him pull a hammy or something like that. You want that guy on the field on offense. So maybe Darius Phillips was drafted with the purpose of putting him back there on kickoffs and punts. We'll see. But in any event, all of these things that I'm about to mention as cons, they all stem from the fact that this guy's raw still at the position, and he's an X-wide receiver. Tackling and willingness, he wants no part of tackling anybody if he doesn't have to. He don't want any part of it. And that stems from him being a X-wide receiver. Receivers don't want to tackle. They don't want any part of that physical part of the game. And so if he can avoid it, he's trying to avoid it. So you're not getting that from him in that sense. So don't look at him as a gunner either on special teams because he's not a great tackler. Man coverage ability, zone coverage ability. He's good at both, not great at either, and I think it's just more experience that he needs. And again, it's not like he didn't get a ton of it at Western Michigan, but I think he could be better at both. You know, I think he could be had. I watched him in some games give up some stuff to some teams. I watched him against Toledo, and you drafted a player from Toledo that we're going to talk about here shortly, and I watched him complete some passes against Darius Phillips, you know, and had some good opportunities versus him in that game. And so I think there's some more growth with him if he can develop more as a cornerback. There's definitely a place in the league for Darius Phillips for sure. And then blitzing capabilities, it's just not there. And again, from the jump, this guy doesn't want to tackle, so sending him on the blitz isn't ideal anyway from that standpoint. But I'm not going to lie to you, man. The big play capability, what this guy brings to the table, the versatility that he has, his playmaking ability, I'm not going to lie to you, I'm drinking the Kool-Aid. And so in the sixth round, 170th pick overall, Darius Phillips, corner out of Western Michigan, is a he probably shouldn't have scored that high. I'm not going to lie to you, but I got caught up. But nonetheless, we push forward, and the next pick is a quarterback. And a lot of people were talking quarterback maybe higher in the draft for Cincinnati. That wasn't the case, but they did go quarterback. And you lose A.J. McCarron in the offseason to free agency, and so you replace him with a guy right in your own backyard in the state of Ohio, in Toledo quarterback Logan Woodside is the 7th round, 249th overall selection. So, Logan Woodside, 6'1", 213, really solid quarterback. I thought he would make a little bit more noise than he did in his final year at Toledo, which I think it was the reason for him being a 7th round pick, among other things. But I digress. You start out with his throwing mechanics. I think he's got solid mechanics, gets the football out of his hands quickly. I think he's got solid footwork as well. Not a lot of things that you got to clean up with this guy at the next level. Pocket awareness. He sees what's going on around him, able to step up now. I do have a problem with him in the pocket. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. But as far as seeing what's around him, knowing when garbage is around, when to protect the football, that sort of thing, he does a pretty good job of being aware while in the pocket. Accuracy, short to intermediate. He's spot on a lot of times. Beautiful throw versus Akron. Corner of the end zone. I mean, you can't throw it any better than this, man. I mean, boy, did he drop a dime. And I watched him in 3 games, versus Miami in 17, versus Western Michigan in 17, and versus Akron in 2017 as well. And that throw versus Akron in the corner of the end zone, man, and he lit Akron up. I mean, he might have thrown for 5 or 6 touchdowns in that game, well over 300 yards. It was ridiculous. That throw was just gorgeous. Then he had a miss versus Miami wide open in a game where you can't afford to miss. Got a guy wide open over the middle of the field for an easy touchdown. Can't afford to miss that one. But those were few and far between with him in the short to intermediate game. Where he struggles is with the deep ball. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. Poise and moxie. I loved him in the Miami game. He got his ass whooped in that game. I mean, he got obliterated, destroyed. They were hitting him all kinds of ways. Left, right. You name it, they were just drilling him. And he was getting rid of the football, but he took a beating. But he kept his team in that football game. He stayed poised, and he gave him a shot. And he even cut it to 1 score late. They were rating that game at halftime. Like I said, he missed a throw over the middle of the field that I know he wants back. Would have loved to have had over again. But nonetheless, he gave him a shot. Stayed in that ball game, gave him a chance. And I loved his moxie and poise after taking an ass whooping all game, but still keeping his team in that ball game. Leadership intangibles, just the simple it. You know, what is it? Don't ask me. I just know when I see it. And this is a guy that seems to have it. Durability, processing speed, these are all good things that you see with this guy. Once he was handed the reins at Toledo, and it took him a while to get it, they brought a guy in from Alabama, and Eli, to challenge him. And ultimately, they wanted him to have that job. They gave it to him a couple of times. And Woodside had to wait for his opportunity, but when he got it, he did not look back, and he didn't get injured for the most part. Did miss a game or 2, but for the most part, he's pretty durable as a quarterback. Processing speed, gets the football out. There are times where he does hold on to it a little bit longer than I would like him to, but for the most part, his processing speed isn't that bad. Decision making, it could be better, but it could be a lot worse. I've seen a lot worse, so I'm not going to kill him. But there was a bad decision versus Akron where he just throws it up in the double coverage. Should have been picked off. He literally rolls out, throws across his body under duress. If you're going to roll out and you don't like what you see, throw it out of bounds. Live to fight another day. Do not chuck it into double coverage and almost get the football picked off. That's a poor decision. And from time to time, you'll get that from Logan Woodside. Timing and anticipation, I think he does a really good job of throwing within the rhythm of a play. Good timing and anticipation when guys are breaking open to get them the football and allow them to run after the catch. So I think he does a good job of throwing the football in timing and rhythm and anticipating guys breaking open. With that being said, though, there are some cons. Obviously, his measurables are not ideal at 6'1", 213. Not the biggest guy in the world from a size standpoint. And that's probably the first knock when you look at Logan Woodside. But if he was better, you know, because Baker Mayfield is pretty much the same size. If he was better, we wouldn't be having the discussion, but obviously measurables, they're an issue. Arm talent, he does not have the strongest arm in the world. I talked about deep ball accuracy and how that was an issue. saw him underthrow quite a few throws that if he had the arm strength to get it out there, he would have been a lot better off in some situations. And so his arm talent is marginal at best. Pocket mobility, I don't love him from a mobility standpoint in the pocket. He's not a bad athlete. I think he moves a little bit better than I thought he was going to. Now, that being said, he's not a tremendous athlete, but he moves well enough. He scrambles when he has to, but when pressure's coming, he cowers in the pocket. If somebody's coming at him, he'll fall on the ground. He's one of those Tom Brady types where, Brady and Breeze and those guys, they're excellent in the pocket as magicians in terms of mobility. Well, he's not sidestepping anybody. He's not stepping up to create an extra second. He's not dipping, shoulder or moving his shoulder ever so slightly to create an extra second to get rid of the football. He sees pressure. He's going down. He's not trying to escape it. He's not trying to extend. He's looking to get down on the turf and preserve himself. So I don't love his pocket mobility. And like I said, the deep ball accuracy, not the greatest. And neither is the accuracy on the move, although against Miami, he threw a touchdown where he's rolling out to his right, and his receiver is right there straddling the sidelines in the end zone, and he hits him with a beautifully thrown football. But again, those were too few and far between for my liking. But he's a quality backup quarterback. I think he's got a shelf life in this league as a backup, and not a bad way to spend one of your 7th round picks, if you ask me. And so in the 7th round, 249th overall pick, Logan Woodside for me is a As we move on to one of the final 2 picks in this draft for the Cincinnati Bengals, 7th round, 252nd overall pick, offensive lineman out of Ole Miss, Roderick Taylor is the So 6'3", 320 pounds, kind of a short, compact frame. And when you watch him, this is a guy that brings a little bit of versatility to the table. 4 starts at right guard, 7 starts at left tackle when he took over for Laramie Tunsil at one point in the following season after Tunsil was drafted. And then 12 starts at right tackle last season. He started every game. So this is a guy that has some versatility. He played up and down the offensive line and brings that to the table if he's able to crack this roster. You start with his measurables, 34 and 1/4 inch arms. So, 34 and a quarter in terms of arm length, that's great. Even though he's got a squatty frame, those are some long arms, but you really can't tell. And we'll talk about that a little bit later on, though. Athleticism, he's a good athlete. I was impressed with him at the combine. I got in my notes, easy mover. He's a really solid athlete. You watch him move in short, confined spaces. He can pick him up and put him down, man. He's very solid and smooth as an athlete. Anchors pretty well. I didn't see him getting bull rushed very often. I watched him in 3 games versus Alabama, Auburn, and LSU, all in 2017. Balance, he was on the ground a little bit too much for my liking, but I'm not going to beat him up for it. It wasn't egregious, but I thought he was on the ground a little bit more than I would like him to be. Redirect, I talked about him being a really good athlete, so he redirects solidly. Toughness, he's got a little bit of toughness to him. I would have liked to have seen him be a little bit more physical, with some people, but I'm not going to kill him for that. Run blocking, I think he's solid in the run game, especially when he gets to the second level. You watch him in the LSU game, and you see a couple of examples of him getting to the second level and doing a great job of sealing off guys and moving them in the run game at the second level. That's what you want. Get to that linebacker, get to that safety, and just devour him. Swallow him up as a 320-pound guard, or in his case, tackle at Ole Miss. And he did that a couple of times in the run game, especially versus LSU. Looking for work. I'd like to see him look for work a little bit more. And again, I think this goes with the lack of nastiness. I'd like to see him be a little bit more physical, a little bit more nasty. I'd like to see him finish a little bit better. I didn't mark these as negatives, but they could have easily been negatives. Double teams, I thought he was really solid on the double team and getting off of those and getting to the second level. Pulling, I thought when asked to pull, I thought he was really solid in doing that. Again, LSU is the game. If you're looking to see him pull and make a difference at the second level, that's the game you want to watch. As you get to his cons, technique, I think his hand placement is poor. There were a couple of times I saw the hand actually slide up to the face. His hands are on the outside consistently, which gets you into trouble with holding. There was one play against LSU where he literally just belly to back suplexes a guy. Hands are just poorly placed, and he's getting beat to the outside, and he just says, to hell with it, picks the guy up, suplexes him. Right in front of the official on the fourth down, how can you not throw the flag on that? So his technique, I think, needs a lot of work. Pass blocking ability, length bothers him to no end. So I watched him against Auburn because I said, all right, I want to see him against different flavored defensive linemen. You watch him against Alabama, struggles with length. You know, they've got guys up and down the defensive line with length. All right, struggled. They were beating him with length, moving him out of the way. He tried to stick his arms out there. They beat him with length and go right around him. I watched him against Auburn against Jeff Holland, a guy with not a lot of length. 6'1", short, squatty, not long arms. Dominated him, okay? Put him to sleep. Then I put on LSU. I said, I want to see what he did against Arden Key. First time Arden Key gets a chance at him, blows right by him with length. Push-pull technique, got him, smokes him, gets to the quarterback. So he struggles with length, big time, which is why he's a guard at the next level. Doesn't have a life outside. Got to play guard. Awareness, spatial awareness, to me, neither one of them were great. So they did a play where they rolled the quarterback to his left. He was at right tackle, so he's moving to his left. And guys are running right by him on the way to the quarterback, and he's not acknowledging these guys running right by him. Like, dude, you can't run to your left and just abandon backside pressure. That's your job, to cut off backside pressure. And guys are just running right by him, and there were leaks everywhere. Guy running inside of him, guy running behind him. Like, bruh, you got to block somebody. And he's not always aware of what's happening around him. So I didn't love him in that situation. And then availability. Here's a guy that had a shoulder injury that cost him 2 games in 2015, an ankle injury that cost him another 3 games in 2016, had a shoplifting deal. I don't know how much of a big deal it is. He said, look, I forgot that I had 2 bags of charcoal at the bottom of my cart. He was arrested for it, whatever. Bottom line is, late round guy, you take a flyer on. If it works out, great. You got some depth along your offensive line. If not, it's a 7th round pick. 252nd overall. He's solid, not great, but in any event, he's. And finally, to wrap up this very lengthy draft, I love this pick to round out your draft. In the 7th round, Florida State wide receiver Auden Tate, 7th round, 253rd overall pick is the selection. So there's a role in the league for Auden Tate. There's a place in the league for him. Should he have gone back to school for 1 more year? Maybe. But again, I've told you, I'm not one to beat guys up for that. I'm not one to tell a guy he should have or shouldn't have went back to school. Your coach leaves, maybe, and obviously he's had a large part in recruiting you there. So, you know, things changed, and he decided that now was the time to go. And I thought that he had a chance to be drafted a little bit earlier than this, but 7th round, 253rd it is. 6'5", 228. So right there is a niche he can carve out for himself at the next level with that size. And so that's where we start. Measurables. Off the charts. 6'5", 228. That's outstanding. And there's some things that he's got to do at the next level if he's going to sustain an NFL career. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. But his size is going to be his calling card. It's going to be his meal ticket for sure. Hands. He's got really good hands. I did see a drop versus Florida where it led directly to an interception. Bobble, poked into the air, picked off by Duke Dawson. But he's got good hands. And for the most part, he's snatching the football out of the air. So I like his hands. Acceleration. When he gets to top speed, he can run by some people. I watched him in the NC State game, on the catch that ultimately ended his day, run by a defender on a deep ball up the field, catch it, track it in the air, fall, and so he's a guy that's building up speed. He's a build-up speed guy. But his acceleration isn't as bad once he gets to top speed. But it takes him a while, and that's what the acceleration kind of is. And so once he gets there, he can move, but it takes him a while to get there. Route running, he's a better route runner than I gave him credit for initially. Ran more of a route tree than you'll see with a lot of these bigger receivers in this draft. Marcel Aitman, some of these other guys that went later in the draft that didn't run a ton of routes, but just used their body as their route, essentially. He ran some routes, and he was good. He's not the most technically sound route runner, but he wasn't terrible either. Physicality, I think he wins off the line of scrimmage, but it takes him a while to win off the line of scrimmage, which he doesn't have the ability to waste any time at the line of scrimmage. He's got to win immediately, but he is physical. Very physical, will go over the middle, which kind of leads into this next pro, toughness. He'll go over the middle. He'll make the tough catch. Southern Miss, and I watched him in 4 games, NC State 2017, Clemson, Florida, and Southern Miss all in 2017. He'll go over the middle, and in that Southern Miss game, he takes a shot, but holds on to the football. And that's the kind of toughness that he exuded throughout his career and is going to have to continue to show at the next level if he wants to stay around. Run after the catch, it's solid. It's not great. He's not shying away from contact, nor should he at 6'5", 228. Not going to make you miss, though, either. Leaping ability, high point in the football, this is a big strength of his, something that he's going to have to do that's going to separate him from a lot of the other receivers in the league and give him a shot to make this roster. Versus Florida in the back of the end zone is a prime example of him going up, high pointing the football, coming down with it. And in the end zone, in the red zone, is where he really has a chance to make himself some money. And we'll talk about that a little bit later on. Speaking of which, catch radius, he's got tremendous catch radius, 6'5", and long arms, and the ability to jump and go get the football, ball tracking. Versus NC State on a deep ball, outstanding. I talked about that earlier. He came down on his shoulder and left the game, but by that time he had already torched him for like 9 grabs and a $130. But also against Clemson in the same breath, twice in the game, once in the on a 4th down on a corner route. I just didn't think he tracked the football as well as I would have liked to seen him do it, and then he didn't lay out for it. It's 4th down. I need it all. Okay, if it's right outside your outstretched arms, I need you to dive. It's 4th down. We got to have it. But it wasn't the best thrown football, but make your quarterback right. Make a play for him. So his ball tracking isn't always the best, but I like it. I mean, his body control is ridiculous. He does a great job of contorting his body to go after the football, using that frame to win. So there's a lot of good there with Arden Tate. Blocking, again, I've seen worse from guys. He's not the best blocker. The best example I have is on a toss. He's able to turn the defender and seal him off against Southern Miss. But don't ask Arden Tate to do a ton of blocking. Even though he's a big guy, you would think he would be a much better blocker than what he is. In any event, dependability, I think he's solid in that department. I think you can throw it to him in a clutch situation and have him come down with it and ask him to make a clutch play for you. Sideline awareness, I think he has a good grasp of where the sideline is and needing to get 2 feet down. And then red zone production. Production is generally what I look for. He didn't have the collegiate production you're looking for, but his red zone production kind of overshadows that. 16 touchdowns in just 2 seasons. Only 65 career catches. You know, there are plenty of guys in this draft with tons of catches in 1 season, way more than 65 in just 1 year. But his red zone production, 16 touchdowns in 2 years, shows what he can be at the next level. His size is where he's going to have to win. He wants to stay in this league. He's going to have to make contested catches. He did a great job of doing it at Florida State. He's going to have to do that at the next level. He's going to have to catch the back shoulder fade. He's going to have to win on 50-50 balls, go up, climb the ladder, take footballs away from corners. He's going to have to win on fade balls in the end zone. He's going to have to win in contested situations at the next level because he's not running away from anybody. Guys are going to get in his face and challenge him at the line of scrimmage because he doesn't do a great job getting off the line of scrimmage in a quick enough fashion. So he's going to have to win contested balls. If he can do that, there's a place in the league for Auden Tate. But you go to his cons. His speed, obviously, I think he runs a little bit faster than this, but he ran a 4.68 at the combine. And when you watch him on tape, I can see 4.68 at times. So that's believable. There's not a lot of quickness or suddenness to what he does. Again, 6'5", 228. What are you expecting, really? And then versatility, he's not bringing anything else to the table. You can't put him in the slot. He's not going to win on option routes with quickness. He's not a guy that is going to be a great gunner on special teams. He's not running back punts or anything. There's not a lot of value here other than the fact that this guy can be a red zone threat for you or a big body out there on 3rd and 7. He's got to catch the football in contested situations. He does that, he's going to have a shot to stick around in this league. But in any event, I love the flyer in the 7th round, 253rd overall pick. Auden Tate for me is So you look at this draft as a whole, and I thought the Bengals did a quality job. They didn't hit any home runs. They hit for average in this draft, but they did a lot of the things that we're accustomed to them doing in the draft. They made a lot of smart decisions and a lot of smart picks and a lot of quality picks, a lot of triples in this draft, a lot of doubles. And when you see what they were able to accomplish, you look at the totality of their draft, it's a really strong draft for a team that really does this the right way and really stockpiles their team with tons of talent, which leads us to their over. So a 3.27 triple for the Cincinnati Bengals, a ton of triples, few bonuses in there for the triples, a few doubles in there, a couple of bonuses for those as well. So a really strong draft, man. And I thought they got the most value in the interior of their draft, in that mid portion of their draft, where you get Mark Walton, where you get Malik Jefferson, Hubbard, all of these guys that, you know, some people looked at as first, second round picks. You get them in that 3rd round or so. I love the Jesse Bates pick. I think he's going to come in and immediately upgrade your safety position. But I thought where the most value in this draft was in the 3rd round, getting Malik Jefferson and Hubbard. These are guys that they're not going to knock your socks off, but they're quality football players. Then you follow that up with Mark Walton. And the steal of your draft may actually be in the 6th round with cornerback Darius Phillips. I may be drinking the Kool-Aid a little bit too much there. We'll see, but I'm fascinated with him and his ability to make plays. And for a Bengals team that I think needs more playmakers, that's a guy that may be able to make plays for you. So that's the Cincinnati Bengals draft in a nutshell and their draft wrap-up here on the Louie Tee Network. Much more to come, and we'll start lining these things up and knocking them down. The Arizona Cardinals will be next. So I'll see you guys next time. Thanks for joining me. Have a good one.